The Chicago Bulls get to return to the court tonight against the Charlotte Hornets after an extended break. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And plus, the Chicago Bulls are talking practice, and Billy Donovan may have learned some things. We're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. What? Man, you guys already know who I am. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central, Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages, and podcasts. But let's get into the topics for today. The Chicago Bulls are returning to the court after an extended break that had 4 days off. And this is one of the things that kind of with the in-season tournament, it does afford teams that don't make it far into the tournament, especially into the knockout round. You're getting a chance to have some extended days off depending on how the schedule falls for you. Yes, you're getting a couple of games added to the schedule, but you're just getting that extended time period off. And for a team like the Bulls that were, had a lot of injuries, P. Will's already coming back, which is a big thing. He's going to be on a 20 to 24 minute restriction when it comes down to it. But we've also have players like Josh Giddey and Nikola Vucevic, and they're dealing with injuries and things like that. So, having that opportunity to really kind of just reevaluate some things in the middle of the season for that amount of time isn't something that a lot of teams have or that's usual in the NBA. I'm of the mind as well. Like, I do think that teams, and I think the NBA can make the scheduling work, is that find a way to give teams a bye week. Like, there should be, I think, in the schedule, just a way for teams to have a week off in the schedule. Like, you look at how long the season is, it's 82 games. Every team should have a week off at some point in the season just to allow some of those things. I think especially when the league's looking at rest versus not resting players, they want players to play a certain amount of games. The best way to ensure that may be to get a bye week in there. I think that could be something that the NBA looks at, especially because it does not seem like the NBA at any point in time is going to be willing to reduce the amount of games because of the money aspect of it. But yeah, I think you look to just add a weekend. I think it's doable. And I don't think that you necessarily have to change a lot about the way that the NBA operates. You don't have to start earlier. You don't necessarily have to finish sooner or anything like that. Like, there should be a way to get a bye week in there for teams. That's just my personal opinion, in my humble opinion, but we'll see. Morning, Haize. Morning, Bulls fans. Much love from Long Beach, California. I'm glad that y'all have a lot better weather than us. Eliminate the preseason. So, no, you need preseason. I think you need the preseason. I mean, they've already cut down the number of games in the preseason. But I do think that you kind of, like, you can work, like, you can change the schedule around, and that would just take the schedule makers to be a lot more intentional. Like, how many times do we see, like, the Bulls play a West Coast team, they'll come back and play the Milwaukee Bucks, and then 2 days later, they're back on the West Coast? Like, if you just kind of think about those things, I know it's a lot of moving pieces. I understand that. It's not as simple as, like, what I would make it here talking about it on a podcast, but it is something that I think that not the Bulls, it's not in the Bulls' control, that the NBA should take a look at, especially, like I said, you say you want to preserve players, you want players to play a certain amount of games. You just, if you give teams a week off, like, because players are going to find a way to take it regardless, right? But anyway, with that said, that's just, my little last minute thing. But, it's really good to see the Bulls play basketball again. I think that's going to be an important thing. And overall, this Bulls team, when you look at the things that have been hurting this team, right? And it's the same things that we've talked about since the beginning. This team has a big deficit defensively. And that deficit defensively that the Bulls have is one that is going to always be there a little bit just because of how the roster's shaking out. And we just don't have the real makeup or the personnel to be a really good defensive team. We just don't have that. And so, when you get that opportunity to kind of step away from the game some, you get to add a perspective. And the thing that I want, and we'll talk about the practice here in a second and what that could bring about and kind of Billy Donovan's comments. But the one thing that I'm hoping that this time off has also afforded the Chicago Bulls is that the coaching staff is really looking at, hey, what can we do here? Like, what are some of the things that we notice that we haven't really had a chance to implement because we've been traveling and, we've been getting more shoot arounds than actual practices? How can we fix this? Not fix it, but how much here that's been hurting this team is correctable, or we can improve it a little bit. I think that's a huge thing that good coaching staff uses will use. So, we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. But the Bulls face off against the Hornets today. And the Bulls go back into a very difficult stretch of the season for them. And so while they got this break from the court, the tests come right away for the Chicago Bulls. Now, they do have a game against the Charlotte Hornets and Toronto Raptors. Scotty Barnes is not going to be playing in that game for the Raptors. We already know now LaMelo Ball is going to be out for the Hornets today. But after that, you got Boston. 2 games against Boston on Thursday and next Saturday. Then you got Milwaukee 2 days before Christmas. You got Atlanta the day after Christmas. For all we know, Atlanta could be coming off the high of winning an NBA Cup. We'll see what happens there. You then go to Milwaukee again, right? And then we got Charlotte, and that finishes out December. I'm glad that they had the week off, the 4 days off that they did, because it's all at that point. Like, the Bulls, the longest stretch that the Bulls have off over now between the end of the year is 2 days. That's it. 2 days off. That's what you have from now until the beginning of 2025 is 2 days off. And then you come out of the new year. You play on New Year's Day against Washington. You then turn around and play that following Saturday against New York, San Antonio, Indiana. So it gets a little easy there, but then it picks right back up from middle to end of January. So the Bulls cannot allow themselves to let up at all. That's just is what it is. When you have the defense that the Bulls have, again, that's not a good thing. When you have the bad defense that the Bulls have, you cannot let up. You don't have the ability to do that. You don't have a game where you can look in your schedule and circle and say, this is an easy game for us. So in getting back to the court, you got to get and find yourself, right? You got to find that. And if you're not going to do that, man, it's going to be bad. It's really going to be bad for this team. And that may be by design. I keep saying it. Like, I get it as fans of a team. We want to see our team win, and we should. We want to see this team fight. We want to see this team compete. We want to see this team get to somewhere. But I think we also have to acknowledge that it may just not be happening for us this season. I hate to tell y'all that. This is probably going to be one of those seasons where wins ain't coming a lot for the Chicago Bulls this year, man. This is going to be a struggle of a year. And I know a lot of Bulls fans aren't mad at that necessarily because of how that plays out to the Bulls and potentially keeping their top 10 pick and things like that. So, but yeah, it is what it is, man, when it sucks down. This team, it's such a interesting thing to talk about this team and like look at the numbers and all that type of stuff. Like, honestly, sometimes I have to take a step back from it, mainly just because I get so in the weeds of analytics with this team so much because I just try to figure stuff out. I really just want to figure out, like, okay, if we're so good offensively overall, why are we so bad in the half court? And then I'm looking at a bunch of numbers and data and all this. I'm looking at on and off splits. I'm looking at players when they guard certain positions versus other positions, trying to figure out how we can be a better defensive team. And then I had to step back and think, nobody else is thinking about this. I guarantee you, as much as the Bulls coaches get paid, they're not sitting there looking at minutes of who guards who where and why Ayo Dosunmu is technically better guarding threes than what he is ones, but yet we still have him guard ones about 35% of the time. I'm the only person who's probably doing this because this season was not meant to be a winning season. So I'm sitting here putting all this effort in, looking at all this basketball nerd crap, and ultimately it's just like, it doesn't matter. You got to believe people. You got to believe people when they tell you who they are. You got to believe them. And this Bulls team told us with the way that they filled out this roster. This Bulls team told us with the way that they, built this team, with the way that they went about their offseason and who they moved and what they got back. This Bulls team told us that this winning is not at the forefront of this Chicago Bulls team. They don't care. I know people are going to look at it and say, Haize, how can you say that? Listen, I'm not thinking that this team is out there actively trying to lose games. That's not what I'm saying. I don't believe that actually at all. But I do think that the way that this team was constructed, the people in the front office didn't look at this team and say, we need to make sure that we have such a sound team that we can get to X, Y, Z. No, I think they looked at it and said, hey, we're going to throw some things out there. We're going to see what works. We're going to see what doesn't. And if somehow this team makes the play-in, great, we did something good. If this team doesn't make the play-in, cool, we get to keep our top 10 pick. That's just my personal opinion on it. You guys can let me know how you feel down below. We're going to keep this conversation going. We're going to start talking about practice and what Billy Donovan said about the practice and what that could mean for the Chicago Bulls on the court as soon as tonight's game against the Charlotte Hornets. But first, we got to get to a message from one of our sponsors, and that's Game Time. There's nothing like the rush of watching an NBA game live. The roar of the crowd, the squeak of the sneakers, and the thunder of the game-winning dunk. Whether you're catching your favorite team this season or grabbing tickets for a rival matchup, Game Time makes it even easier than ever to get great seats. With Game Time Picks, the app curates the best deals so you're not stuck scrolling through endless ticket options. Plus, the app lets you preview panoramic seat views before buying. And the all-in pricing feature means no hidden fees at checkout. You got to make sure you toggle that feature on. And the Game Time has your back. Their lowest price guarantee ensures you always get the best price. They'll even credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better deal. Plus, their ticket coverage includes job loss insurance and even cancellation protection. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and then use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We're Locked On Bulls next. All right, my Bulls fans, thank you guys for tuning in and sticking it out with us. You guys know, make sure you guys go and subscribe to Locked On Bulls. If you're on the podcast side, go and hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. If you're on the YouTube side, go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave a 5-star review. Help the podcast grow. With that said, I want to get into the next topic that we have to cover today, and that's practice, right? Over the course of time, and what the Bulls have taken advantage of is use this extended time period to have scrimmages, to have practice, get kind of more back to what they did in training camp. And one of the things that Billy Donovan did in training camp that I had to give him credit for is go to the 14-second shot clock. Now, we haven't heard any details if he's done anything that dramatic in these scrimmages and things that the Bulls have done. But one thing that stood out a lot from Billy Donovan, he said this as much on 670 The Score, yesterday as well, is that the thing that he's really excited to kind of see and to get to doing at some point is playing Buzelis and Patrick Williams together. Now, I already know my boy Winton, he's in the chat. I know Winton's going to say, oh, my God, it doesn't. Yes, Patrick Williams and Buzelis can be a really good front court, but not as long as Billy Donovan is the coach here. I know Winton. I love him, and I understand Winton's plight there. But what I'll say is this, is that it's good to hear Billy Donovan actually make a realization that is a more modern take, right? So for so long, this Bulls team, and still, right? And we're going to have to do it some because of the roster that we field. But when you look at around the NBA, right? When you look at Paolo and Franz, right? When you look at the Houston Rockets and all the versatile 3-4 players that they have down there, right? When you look at, of course, Boston with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, like, one of the things that the NBA is going towards is using versatile forwards. I think like in the early 2000s, it was you want a versatile backcourt, right? You want that. And now we're starting to go towards if you have these versatile forwards that can play either forward position, that can switch, that can guard, that can both, get out and run and do some things. And so hearing Billy Donovan on 670 The Score talk about how he wants to see, he's excited to see Buzelis and Patrick Williams play something together, that was really encouraging in the sense that it's good that he has the mindset to try those things, right? When you look at it as well, and I talked about this a little bit over on Chicago Bulls Central, is that Modest and Patrick Williams both bring positional size and length, right? And I know people are going to say, but Haize, P. Will is an undersized power forward at being 6'8". Yeah, but he has an over 7-foot wingspan, and when you look at a lot of the power forwards in the league, he's right along there. It is what it is. Buzelis, a 6'9", 6'9.5", I believe, with an over 7-foot wingspan, and both these guys can get out and run. Now, Modest is way more mobile than what Patrick Williams is, but I'm really excited to see the offense-defense balance, and when you look at it as well, Patrick Williams, over the last over 100 games, he's a 40% three-point shooter. You then look at Modest Buzelis and how he's grown defensively. So while their strengths and weaknesses kind of overlap a little bit, that could be a versatile thing. Now, we got to see it actually be played. That's a big thing there. We got to see how much, because it may not look seamless right away. It may not even look good right away. Modest Buzelis and Patrick Williams have played like 38 minutes on the court together, and the results have been bad so far. It's been bad. So I gotta talk about that and be fair in that, but you're not going to get to the place. And Modest Buzelis already is a much different player than what he was at the start of the season. Billy Donovan has even said it, right? Said as much so as like, you have to have Modest Buzelis out there. Whereas you look at the beginning of the season, the way that he talked about Modest was like, yeah, Modest got to earn minutes. Now he's talking about Modest as a player that needs to play for the Chicago Bulls. So that's a step in the right direction. And so while P. Will is on this minutes restriction and more than likely probably going to come off the bench, we'll see what the starting lineup looks like tonight for the team. It affords an opportunity to take a look at what these guys look like. And the thing that I'm also excited about, if you do have Modest and P. Will coming off the bench, or even let's say out of P. Will's 24 minutes that he's on that minutes restriction, let's say you get 10 to 15 of those with Modest out there. You put in Lonzo Ball and Dalen Terry out there with them as well, or even if it's Lonzo, Coby, right, or even Coby, Ayo, Modest, P. Will, Jalen Smith. I don't know what that team's going to do defensively. I don't know how good that team's going to look defensively, but that's a lineup I'm excited to see. And so one thing that I've been talking about a lot and harping on, maybe a little bit too much if I'm admitting it, that I've been talking about a lot this season is Billy Donovan needs to double down on his better lineups more, right? The lineups that have been having a positive impact, and get creative with the lineups. The Bulls just don't have a lot of size up front. We don't. We got Jalen Smith. We got Nikola Vucevic. Anybody other than those two, because Adama is apparently not coming up to play any, it's going to be a smaller lineup. But we have positional size at every other position. Coby, Ayo, Josh Giddey, Lonzo Ball. These are all the four players that are going to play the 1 and the 2 for you. Then if you even put in Zach LaVine there playing the 2, he has positional size as well. So yes, we're thin up front, but you have the opportunity to play a bigger, more mobile lineup. That's what I really like about that. All those guys that I named can get out in transition. They can create the fast break with their steals and their rebounds. They can finish, right, or create for other players in that opportunity as well. That's the thing. Switchability. This Bulls team could have some. We're a very switch-heavy team with not really running a lot of players that are really good switchable. So I hope that with some time and perspective, that Billy Donovan's looked at some things and seen some lineups that are like, hey, maybe we can do a little something here. And the thing with Billy Donovan, though, is if it's not successful in the first 2 games, I can completely see a world in which Billy Donovan says, yeah, we wanted to run Modest and P. Will out there some. We played them. We allowed that for these past 2 games, and we'll get back to the drawing board. Maybe it's not ready, and then he'll never go back to it in the season unless there's injury or something. That's always the biggest risk there when it comes to Billy Donovan, is that he'll try something new. Billy Donovan actually does try new things, but the problem is that he doesn't try them either long enough or consistent enough for them to really get into rhythm, and then he'll be like, oh no, we're not going to do it again, right? So that's the thing when it comes down to it as well. Yeah, trusting Billy Donovan is always a dangerous prospect for a lot of Bulls fans, because Billy can go so wildly in one direction and overcorrect or undercorrect, and then you're stuck looking crazy. I think the kids are playing too much when they're younger in AAU, and by the time they get to the NBA, they've lost so many minutes, they're going to have injuries. I can't say I agree with that, but you could be on to something. You definitely could be on to something. I think the Bulls should go back to a Ayo Coby guard lineup with Ball and Giddey coming off the bench. Lonzo can make defensive adjustments on the court that Giddey can't. Hey, listen, Reginald, I hear everything. But like I said, Billy Donovan, whether it's politics, whether it's stubbornness, or whether it's just downright stupidity, as my 160-pound dog is about to knock over my camera, what you doing, bro? Come here. Just come over here. You're just about to knock stuff over. The one thing with Billy Donovan, though, is that, he's just a frustrating coach sometimes, man. He's just frustrating at times. And it's just sometimes the things that Billy Donovan fails to do or whatever, it's really head shaking, right? Because I think that whether it is his own stupidity or whatever else it is, that we're not going to see a change to the starting lineup, despite what the numbers tell you. Besides, we can look at and we could throw all the analytics out there to support the fact that Giddey should either be out there with Ayo, or Coby should be out. Ayo should be a starter in the backcourt for this team. That's just at this point, you can figure it out. Ayo should be starting. He's better as a starter. The Bulls have been better on the court when he's a starter. And this goes back to last season. And I get it that he is so versatile and he should be able to be a bench player as well and come off and be your sixth man. But sometimes some players are just better starting. And Ayo Dosunmu, in my opinion, has shown that he is just better when he starts. But don't get me started on that high horse. That's not a topic I was planning on talking about today. Maybe we'll get into that on Monday. But we're going to have to get into another brief break. I'm going to talk to you guys about a message from one of our sponsors, and that is FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I've been telling you guys, if you're going to bet, FanDuel gives you such a leg up than some of the other sports books, giving you all the information that you need to place an informed bet on the same page where you place your bets. They're just making it easier on you. You'd be crazy not to take advantage of it. Just go to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're Locked on Bulls next. All right, Bulls fans, thank you guys, as always, for tuning in and being the best part of this show and this channel. And we love you guys for it. But with that said, man, I want to talk a little bit about, before we get out of here, who is playing tonight, who's out, who's in. And as of right now, Patrick Williams is listed as questionable. So we'll see if he ends up playing. But all signs point to him. Billy Donovan says all signs point to him coming back and making his return on Friday. Plus, the Bulls are playing in Charlotte. Don't forget, him and Coby White are the Carolina boys. So we'll see if those guys both take the court. Josh Giddey and Nikola Vucevic are both listed as questionable. Vuce with an illness, Josh Giddey with some back tightness there. So we'll see what happens there. LaMelo Ball is already listed as out. So this is a really good opportunity for the Chicago Bulls to try to bring some things together and try to win a game. Again, the thing with the Bulls are they don't always win the games that they should win. That's what we're trying to see from the Bulls today. Take advantage of a team missing out on its best player and go out there and try to get it dub. Now, will they? That's a story for another day. You can never bet on a Bulls win, unfortunately. That's just where we are with this team. The confidence in this team is at an all-time low. Hell, it seems like the confidence in this team in general is at a low. On the team is at a low. Like, when you look at it, so much right now that's going on with this team that just seems to be kind of pushing things back, but we'll see what happens, man. But we'll see what happens there. Overall, I think it's this when it comes down to it. This team has an opportunity with rest, with getting practice, with getting players back, with gaining some confidence, hopefully, to really come out here and show Bulls fans something, right? It'll be nothing worse than for your team to come out after 4 days off and then look like crap. Right now, and don't get me wrong, I will not put that past the Chicago Bulls. There's one thing that we cannot put it past, that the Chicago Bulls should come out somehow after everything should be stacking on them to be able to look better, and they come out and we're just like, what have you been doing the last 4 days? So, that's always a concern. And I hope that concern is not proven to be valid, right? I don't even like putting that out in the atmosphere, because anything that will go wrong for the Bulls typically does go wrong for the Bulls. But this is a team against a Charlotte Hornets team that is not great offensively, right? They're a bottom 4 team in the league as far as points per game scored. They're right in the middle of the pack as far as defensively, though. So that puts them at way better defensively than the Chicago Bulls. So this could be one of those games where it actually ends up being a pretty fun game to watch between two teams that are struggling in different ways. And so the Bulls right now sit at 10th in the Eastern Conference. They have a point differential that's around a 32-win team. And we'll see if they can start changing some of that a little bit. We'll see. We'll see if they can. I'll hold out hope for what it's worth. And and we'll see where this team sits. And that's always the thing with this Bulls team. We will always see where this team is because it's all going to be proven true. JD8 says we better win tonight. Listen, I hear you on that, but one thing is the Bulls don't always do what we think that they should, could, or would do in situations. Because it is what it is. I mean, it's unfortunate. It sucks, right, that this is the team that we have constantly talked about and seen struggle in the same ways over years, but it's what we got. And we'll be covering it right here. I will be live after the game tonight, so make sure you guys stay in tune with us for that. But that's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Locked On Bulls. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, lockedonbulls@gmail.com. If you want to follow me, you can do so at CEO Haize. Make sure you remember that we are free and available in every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube, the Odyssey app, and Amazon Fire TV. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See red, y'all. And I will see you guys later on tonight. Peace.